So here we have Tom Gabriel Fischer from Triumph of Death now.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many reincarnations of you over the years. So it's
I'm sorry about that. I'm old.
um, let's talk about Triumph of Death and Hellhammer, which are Triumph of Death is presenting the songs of Hellhammer live.
Mm-hmm.
So back then, when you started Hellhammer, you wanted to be more extreme than anyone else. Noise Records, I think, they had a slogan in a flyer for the Apocalyptic Rage saying that Venom are BGs in front of Hellhammer. Was it back then your main intention? And were Venom the BGs in front of you?
Well, actually, I quite like the Bee Gees, so that's actually a compliment for Venom because I'm quite a fan of what the Bee Gees did in the 70s, so it's nothing negative for me.
Yeah.
Hellhammer had basically two approaches. One approach was, of course, we were young people filled with testosterone, and we wanted to be noticed. We were full of energy, and yes, of course, we wanted to be the most extreme band ever. But the other thing was much more personal. The three main members of Hellhammer, which was Steve Warrior, who formed the band with me, and also later Martin Eric Ain, who replaced Steve Warrior, and I, the three of us, we all had a very difficult life, a very difficult private life. We had a very problematic youth, each in our own way, with our parents and many other things, with a lot of violence and darkness. So the personal level was that there was a lot of pain and frustration and anger in us, and we wanted to let this out. We needed some kind of valve to let this out, which caused Hellhammer to sound so extreme at the time when there was really no extreme metal scene.
Mm-hmm.
So it's two approaches: a very personal one and a more youthful one. And as for our stand towards Venom, of course, Venom was extremely important to us. We knew Discharge, we knew Motorhead, which inspired us that we could do very heavy music, very wild music. But Venom was really the first heavy metal band that was so extreme. And of course, that was a huge inspiration to us. And while we, of course, wanted to be as extreme or more extreme than Venom, we always were very honest that Venom, without them, there probably wouldn't have been a Hellhammer. So, there's a lot of facets to this.
Yeah, yeah. So you recorded some songs, gave it to Noise, and in the beginning, Karl Walterbach didn't want to release your songs because they sounded too awful for him, and I think for many other people back then.
Yes, yes.
It's always a question that I have over the years. I hadn't lived the exact time in 1883, 84. I started listening to that kind of music a couple of years later. So I wasn't into the Hellhammer thing when it happened. But I always remember people saying that Hellhammer in the beginning, in the 80s, that it was a crap. Everybody was saying that it was awful. And many years later, I think the same people praise Hellhammer. How do you explain this thing?
Well, you have to realize that at the time Hellhammer existed, from 1982 to 1984, in Central Europe, which is where we were, the main heavy metal bands were bands such as AC/DC, Whitesnake, Rainbow, and so on. And most of these bands became more commercial. Look at Whitesnake, for example, or also Rainbow and Richie Blackmore changing the whole lineup to make the band more commercial, and it worked. They became much more successful, and so on. And it was a time when bands were really sophisticated. Ronnie James Dio had a really good voice. Bands were commercial, and so on. And the productions of these albums were fantastic. And in this scene comes Hellhammer with an underground, low-budget production, very primitive songs, vocals that are at best punk. Of course, we were completely anachronistic, and I can totally understand that most people in our scene at the time were shocked and rejected Hellhammer. It was probably too much at once. And we were, of course, insulted at the time about the negative reaction, and we also felt, okay, now we're really going to show them. But in reality, now looking back, I also understand the reaction to some extent. There was no extreme metal scene at the time. You know, what Hellhammer did was not normal. And the change really came when an extreme metal scene started to exist. First, there was thrash metal, then death metal started to exist, and black metal came in Scandinavia in the early 90s. And this normalized extreme heavy metal for our scene. And there was also fans who were into such radical music, whereas 10 years before they weren't. So it took a while, which is fine. I mean, what these people were saying was that Hellhammer is not good enough. And I have to admit, some of it was true. Hellhammer was very primitive, and we needed to improve. I like the heaviness of Hellhammer, but yes, of course, if you listen to the songs as we play them now with Triumph Death, the songs are very, very primitive, very simple, and they cannot match a Richie Blackmore or even AC/DC. So they, now the older Tom knows they actually had a point with their criticism.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that I cannot say success of Celtic Frost, that the existence of Celtic Frost, because even Celtic Frost did not have the success they had, the name that they have now, the fame that they have now, back then. Do you think that this Celtic Frost thing helped Hellhammer gain a cult status nowadays?
That probably was one of the components that the same people who were in Hellhammer at the very end, Martin Ain and me, created a band that was more sophisticated and more artistic, and we were successful to a certain extent with that. I think, yeah, of course, probably a lot of people then later went and re-listened to Hellhammer, which was basically our roots. But it's also a much more global thing. Like I said, for example, the black metal wave had a huge influence on the perception of Hellhammer, and also increasingly extreme bands. Extreme metal evolved and became more and more extreme, and so Hellhammer became a normal band, basically.
Yeah, and when you have these extreme metal bands mentioning Hellhammer as their influence, then a new wave of fans comes and listens to what they thought it was crap, and start listening to it in a different way. So my favorite band mentions Hellhammer as their influence, so they must be good.
Well, it was the same with me when I was a young heavy metal fan, and I read all the interviews with Michael Schenker and Scorpions and Led Zeppelin, and they talked about their influences. I went and tried to listen to these albums because I was very curious.
Yeah.
And you learn new music. You learn about new music. You learn where it all comes from. So maybe the same happened 10 years, 20 years later with Celtic Frost and Hellhammer. That's of course possible. Yeah.
Don't know how the younger generation listens to music. I think it listens to music from Spotify, and fans also like this band. But back then, we were reading in interviews of our favorite artists mentioning their influences or some new bands that they hear, and we started listening to the new bands, to these bands, either
Exactly.
older or newer. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Would you consider that the Monotheist album, in the Monotheist album, the Hellhammer essence was somehow present in the sound of that album?
I think of all the Celtic Frost albums, yes, it's the strongest presence of Hellhammer in Monotheist, yeah. Because we decided we needed to be closer to our roots. We didn't want to have a commercial version of Celtic Frost or an old version of Celtic Frost. When we reformed the band, we said we're going to reform Celtic Frost as if it was after Hellhammer. Like we wanted to have the original essence of Hellhammer. The difference was, of course, that in 2001, when Martin Ain and I reformed Hellhammer, we were much stronger characters. We were much more experienced. We were better musicians. We knew what we were doing. We knew how to produce an album. We weren't new and inexperienced as we were in Hellhammer, and we knew exactly where to go, what to do. I knew my guitar sound in and out, and yes, I think that really had an influence on Monotheist, and Monotheist at times is very radical, very dark, which is a direct connection to Hellhammer. Of course, on a more sophisticated level, but yes, the aura, I think, is the same, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Nowadays, you also perform old school sets with Trypticon performing Celtic Frost. Why did you decide to have a different lineup performing the Hellhammer songs?
Well, the idea of the Celtic Frost tribute concerts with Trypticon didn't come from us. It actually came from concert promoters. We were asked by certain concert promoters. Mm-hmm. For example, the Hell's Heroes Festival in America was one of the first festivals who asked, "Could you imagine doing this?" And we had been talking over the years in Trypticon that maybe one day we'll play Morbid Tales in its entirety or something like that, but we never made solid plans to do so. But then these questions came, and we discussed it in the band. We said, do we want to do this? Is this the right thing to do? And we eventually decided, yes, it is the right thing to do, because two members of Trypticon were in Celtic Frost, and we love this music, and it's our roots, and we feel very honest about it. The reason why I don't do the Hellhammer songs with Trypticon is because there has to also be a limit. Trypticon is a current band, and it's an active band, and we want to also still be relevant as a band that creates new music. We don't just want to be a tribute band to old music. And we have played occasionally, we have played a Hellhammer song or two in our set in Trypticon, but that's as far as I think it should go. Mm-hmm. Trypticon, at the end of the day, is also Trypticon. So it was important to me to have a band entirely dedicated to the Hellhammer music, to have musicians also in the band that are as young as I was when I was in Hellhammer, to have that same approach, the same spirit. And at the end of the day, artistically, it's also very interesting for me to also play with different musicians. I've been playing with Trypticon for 15 years, and I'm extremely happy in Trypticon, but of course, it's also inspiring to play with different people occasionally.
Yeah. Another thing about this Triumph of Death band is why did you choose the name Triumph of Death instead of Hellhammer? Does it have to do that you consider that something could not be done after the loss of Martin?
Well, Hellhammer was formed by Steve Warrior and me, and I could have called it Hellhammer, but it would have been a lie towards the audience. Like I said earlier, Hellhammer existed in a very specific period. Most of all, number one, in our lives, Martin Ain, Steve Warrior, me. It was a very unique time in our lives that made us sound like this, made us be so aggressive, so heavy, so extreme at the time. And then it was a very unique time on the planet with East and West, the Iron Curtain, and the Cold War, and the constant threat of nuclear war. And then it was also a different time in our scene, with the revolution of our scene, with the new wave of British heavy metal that completely changed the heavy metal scene.
Yeah.
all of these things make it a very, very unique period. And you cannot just go in the year 2018 and say, okay, I'm reforming Hellhammer, and it's the same, because it's not going to be the same.
Yeah.
And also, Steve Warrior no longer plays. Bruce Day, the drummer, no longer plays. It would have been a lie towards the audience to go and assemble some musicians, say, well, this is Hellhammer. Of course, some people in the industry would have liked it. Concert promoters or record companies would have liked it because the name Hellhammer is easy to market.
Yeah.
But I wasn't going to do this for commercial reason. I was going to do this and be honest to the audience. And so I said, no, I'm forming a tribute band, and this is the closest you can get nowadays to Hellhammer. It's impossible to reform Hellhammer, so I'm doing what is the closest. And this is just me being honest to myself and also to the audience.
How did you approach the Hellhammer songs in the live concerts of Triumph of Death? Is this, could we say that it's a modern approach to Hellhammer songs, playing better, of course?
Well, the playing better, of course, happens because we are all better musicians, including me.
Yeah.
I'm no longer 17, 18, 19, and totally inexperienced. I've been a musician for 42 years. So, yeah, the songs sound better, which in a way it's a shame. Because Hellhammer was a very primitive prototype band. But other than us being better musicians, I think we are very authentic. We play the songs exactly as I remember playing them with Hellhammer. We didn't change the songs. We didn't change the arrangements. We didn't add any fancy instrumental sections or technical details. We play them as authentic as we can because we wanted to have the Hellhammer experience. We wanted it like Hellhammer is going on stage. But yeah, the only difference is that we have become better musicians, and of course I cannot stop that. I cannot go on stage on purpose play badly. That would be ridiculous, you know.
In the live album, there is also the song "Visions of Mortality" from Celtic Frost. Why did you choose to add the Celtic Frost song? And I would like you to tell me, was this song part of the To Megatherion album, which was supposed to be a Hellhammer release before Celtic Frost? Because I think
that's true.
Yeah, it's true.
It would have been on the To Megatherion album as planned by Hellhammer. It's actually not a Celtic Frost song. It was the very last song we wrote while we were in Hellhammer. When we came back from West Berlin in early 1984 from recording the Hellhammer EP, we really thought we had to completely redesign the band. We felt we weren't good enough. We felt the material wasn't strong enough after this experience of working in an international studio. So I tried to write more sophisticated material. And the first song I wrote like this was Visions of Mortality, and Martin wrote the lyrics to it. And we played it in Hellhammer in the rehearsal room many times, and we made a rehearsal cassette of it. And we then listened to the song, and we looked at each other and we said, this is, we really love the song, but it's no longer Hellhammer. It sounds like something different. We have basically opened a new book. And after a lot of discussions, we decided, let's take this song and take it as a prototype for a new band. And so we decided to leave Hellhammer, which we did on May 30, 1984, and we formed the same day we formed Celtic Frost, literally from nothing. And we took this song, Visions of Mortality, and said, this is the first Celtic Frost song. It was the last Hellhammer song, and it showed us it's a different direction. So this is now the prototype for Celtic Frost.
Yeah.
Eventually it was only recorded properly for the Morbid Tales album, but it was actually a Hellhammer song and would have been on a Hellhammer album had Hellhammer actually done an album.
So in a way, this particular song paved the way to start Celtic Frost as a band, because you saw that you needed to do something different from your soul, because as you told us in the beginning, you like Bee Gees, and you have been listening to many different types of music. You are a music fan, and this is depicted in the music that you created, not only in Celtic Frost, but in Trypticon and all your other bands throughout your whole career. Okay, that's a good thing to know for
Well, we talked earlier about the criticism against Hellhammer at the time, and I said I have to admit some of the criticism was correct. So we came home from the studio in West Berlin after recording the Apocalyptic Rates EP of Hellhammer, and everybody said, "Wow, what you recorded is extreme, yes, but it sounds terrible. It's very primitive for the ears of the time." And we were sitting there in our homes thinking, it's very insulting and it's difficult to listen to this criticism, but in a way they have a point. And Visions of Mortality was my first reaction to it. I was trying to see, can I write more sophisticated music while still being heavy? And I wrote Visions of Mortality, and we played it in Hellhammer, and it sounded quite cool. We really liked it. But we also realized it's no longer like the early Hellhammer music, like Maniac, or which has like one riff. You know, we knew that we heard it in the song that this is no longer the same band, and we needed to do something new.
And you made your move and created the most avant-garde band of that time. Totally different, but exactly the same in terms of commercialism, let's say.
Yes.
I think that Carl must have lost his mind while you were presenting him all the tapes. He must have been cursing his soul for signing you, and
absolutely.
Having
and he told us too. I mean, he let us know that he didn't think Hellhammer was good. He didn't think Celtic Frost was good. I mean, he was very open about this. When we recorded Morbid Tales, he said it's terrible. When we recorded Into the Pandemonium, he said it's terrible. And now,
and
40 years later,
and he wanted to stop the recording of
absolutely. And now, 40 years later, he's in a book and he says, "Well, I was a visionary. I signed this band, Celtic Frost." But that's not really how it was at the time. He actually didn't like it, and he didn't recognize what we were trying to do. But here we go. I'm still around. The Noise Records, the original Noise Records, is long gone. So
Yeah, and having spoken to Carl a few years ago about the noise, the records of Noise and the whole record label. He didn't have, I think, the best things to say about you. As far as I am reading all these years, and as far as I have heard from him, he describes you as a kind of nuts that you like to let people go of your band. And I don't think he has the strongest opinion about you personally, Hellhammer, and Celtic Frost. What was your relationship at last with Carl? Is it just the person? Was he just the person that was releasing your records, and nothing more than that?
We came to this label in early 1984. And we had infinite respect for this man because we thought he had a vision and he had created this label out of nothing. And we would have gone, I said it many times, we would have gone to the end of the world for this man. We really looked up to him and we were prepared to work with him and build up our band and also build up the label with him. He was young, he seemed very dynamic. He didn't seem like the record company people that you would see in magazines with the tie and the suit. He was very uncomplicated, and we were very proud to be on Noise Records. Of course, then when we were signed to Noise Records, we discovered the realities. And if Carl says, I'm nuts, well, I don't know if it's nuts to want to be paid for your music. I don't know if it's nuts if you want to have a fair record contract. I don't know if it's nuts if you object to a record company stealing your merchandise. I don't know if it's nuts if you object to a record company stealing your publishing rights, your song rights. To this day, I don't own the song rights of my own song from that time. All of them. They basically stole it from us. To this day, I think I'm not nuts for insisting that the record company doesn't change our lyrics, our songs, our artwork, the producers of our albums. I don't think it's nuts if you object to the record company coming to the studio and trying to change your recording sessions, interfering with everything and never paying you royalties for what you're doing, even though you see the albums are selling all over the world. Okay, if all of this is nuts, yes, then I'm nuts. Yeah. I personally think I have a different opinion. It's not nuts. I think it's normal to insist on these things. And I think the one who's nuts, or maybe much worse than nuts, is somebody else and not me. But that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah.
After 42 years in the record industry, and having my own label, my own music publishing company nowadays, and working with actual professionals now at BMG and Century Media, yeah. I think I have the right to say all of this.
The exact words were strictly nutty. I found my interview. It was strictly nutty. Okay.
Well,
let's leave. Apart.
I have no problem hearing this from somebody who screwed over so many bands. You know, the thing is, it wasn't just Celtic Frost. The reason why he hates Celtic Frost most is that we were the first band to take legal action against the label to free ourselves from the contract. I think Carl never forgave us for this.
Mm-hmm. So I guess that if you were to have done something differently during the Hellhammer days, was not to sign the contract presented to you by Carl. Is that so? If you had to change something.
That's very difficult to say. At the end of the day, we did most of our albums the way we did it. We had to fight very hard against the label to do our albums our way, especially during Into the Pandemonium. But in Hellhammer, we did the Apocalyptic Greats EP exactly the way we wanted it to be. And I think it was important to be signed at that time. If we had waited, other bands would have taken our place. So even though the memory of being on Noise Records is largely negative, there are, of course, also positive moments. And one of them is that this label was the first label to give us a chance with our music when everybody else laughed at us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's me being realistic.
Watching the videos from the Triumph of Death shows that you recorded, we hear the crowd doing the How did you come with the idea to use this death grunt, which is a trademark, even though I don't think you are the first to.
No, I'm not the first. I don't know why people focus so much on me doing this, because many others have done it. If you listen to 1970s funk music, for example,
James Brown.
You can hear it in many artists. You can hear it. Also, some of the new wave of British heavy metal artists have done it before me. But for some reason, in the 1980s, the press focused on me doing it. Maybe that was the only interesting thing about me. I don't know, but so I became legendary for this, even though I don't really deserve this.
Why did you want to consistently stay away from the black metal tag as you have mentioned many times. You wanted to stay away, not to be mentioned as black metal. Is this because of the philosophy of this movement?
It was strictly because Martin, Eric Ain, and I did not follow any religion. And at the time, black metal seemed to imply that you're a Satanist. And we were neither Christians nor Satanists nor following any other human religion. We in our lyrics we dealt with these topics because we were interested in learning about it, but we weren't Satanists. So we didn't want to be named black metal because a lot of people thought automatically that makes them Satanists or whatever. And we simply wanted to be we wanted to be honest. For us, we played extreme metal and we were interested in history and also the history of religion, of course. We were interested in learning about social issues. We were interested about learning about the history of occultism, but we didn't follow any religions, and that was the difference.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any plans to write new songs with Triumph of Death or Trypticon?
Well, Trypticon, of course, we're working on a new studio album that we hope to complete in the coming months. It's going to be the fourth Trypticon album. With Triumph of Death, we have some more recordings that we might release as EPs. And also there's some more Hellhammer songs that we would like to add to our set, like Buried and Forgotten, for example, and then record those in a live setting.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually we might maybe try to write 1 or 2 or 3 songs in the Hellhammer style and see what that sounds like. But we're very careful with that.
Yeah.
Hellhammer is very, very sacred to us and many other people. And if we do this, we need to be sure it actually sounds the way it should sound. Otherwise, we're not going to do this. So we will try it, but we have no solid plans about this.
Do you intend to play more songs from the demos, or more songs than the ones included in the live album in your live show in Athens?
Well, we are probably going to play a few songs that we hadn't played yet when we play in Athens. There's probably going to be a handful of songs that we haven't played yet. We're playing the entirety of the Apocalyptic Raids EP. We played the 2 death metal songs, and the rest is all demo material. It remains to be seen. We're gonna meet in a week or 2 or 3 and play some of the songs we haven't played yet and see what it sounds like, and then we decide.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you a hypothetical question. Which would be your ideal extreme metal lineup?
I'm playing in it.
Yeah, you are playing in it. Yeah, but you have to decide. You are playing.
I'm playing in it I'm playing in it in Tryptykon, and I'm also playing in it in Triumph of Death. I'm very fortunate. I don't really think I need somebody else. I'm very, very happy with both of the bands. They have very different characters, both bands, but I'm very happy that I'm actually granted to play in both. It's a privilege.
So, Tom, our time is running out, so I have to thank you very much for your time.